All right, good morning, everybody. It is 8:30. We'll go ahead and get our fiscal committee meeting here underway. We've got 9 different items before us, one of which will probably have some discussion that came to us from Committee of the Whole. So we'll have our interim city attorney share some more information once we get to that. But kicking things off, item number 1, we've got a resolution asking an extension of contracted services with Ovell, Rome and Associates, doing business as Ask Ovell, for interim human resources leadership in an amount not to exceed $100,000 for total authorized contract amount of $200,000.
Support.
All right, moved and supported.
Doug Matthews,
Welcome.
Assistant City Manager. Normally this is an item we'd have the HR Director bring forward, but under the circumstances, here I am. As you all know, we've been in the process of finding a new permanent Human Resources Director. During that interim time, Ovell Barbie has been serving in the role and doing an extraordinary job. We anticipate, we're going to be seeing those initial candidates next week, so we're hoping to be able to have somebody on board at the beginning of the year. This will provide ongoing leadership as well as some transition time in between the new person coming on board, where he'll be able to share what he's learned over the time that he's been here.
Awesome, thanks. Any questions or discussion, colleagues? All right, hearing none. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, the motion carries. Item number 2, we've got a resolution authorizing a joint use agreement with AT&T regarding shared use of the utility wood pole infrastructure.
So moved.
Support.
All right, moved and supported. Morning.
Good morning, Commission. I want to take an opportunity to kind of tee this one up for our new ELC manager, Ryan Timmer, who was recently promoted into that position. He's going to talk about it, but I wanted to introduce you all to him.
Thanks for being here. Congrats on your new role.
Thanks, appreciate that. Good morning, all.
Morning.
So we're seeking approval for a resolution, a joint use resolution with AT&T for the shared use utility infrastructure that we share with them in the right-of-way. Grand Rapids and AT&T, we both own poles in the right-of-way, and we've been using each other's poles for many years now. The city has 2,207 poles that we attach on AT&T, and AT&T has 1,086 poles that they attach to the city. So this proposal of this agreement establishes a collaborative work for the shared use of the utility pole infrastructure. We have something similar with Consumers Energy that we passed in 1980. And this proposed joint use agreement will streamline operation and formalize a long-standing cooperative relationship between the city and AT&T.
Great, thanks. Any questions or comments, colleagues?
Commissioner, could I add
Sure.
to this?
Yep, go right ahead.
I really appreciate Ryan and his work, and Bruce along with that, and the City Attorney's Office. This has been a long-standing issue of just chasing bills back and forth when we both share a facility. This is an outstanding agreement that mirrors the other ones that we have with utility providers, and I'm fully supportive of this because it really was a burden on us trying to fight back and forth, trying to collect monies that really we shouldn't have billed in the first place, because this is really a partnership agreement with our utility companies.
Awesome. Nope, thanks for adding that. All right, hearing and seeing no other comments, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, the motion carries. Item number 3, we've got a resolution to authorize the city treasurer to do business with RBC Capital Markets, LLC, as a broker-dealer.
So moved.
Support.
All right, moved and supported. I'll turn it back over to you.
Good morning, Commissioners. With this item today, we look forward to working with RBC. They are one of the larger providers of underwriters of large municipal bonds. In fact, they just did a large one with the state of Michigan. And by having them as one of our broker dealers, when they're the lead underwriter, we will be able to get a larger chunk of our investment choices available to us. And so we really want to partner with these types of organizations because when you fall to the second and third tier of underwriting, then your pro rata allotment goes down. And so this is going to give us a lot more flexibility to get some of those bigger issues. They just issued over $575 million for state of Michigan, and they were actually housing units. And those are the things, those are the social bonds, the items that we want to participate in and gain more of, because that we really want to elevate that in terms of the housing within the state of Michigan.
Okay, thanks. Colleagues, any questions on this one? All right. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, the motion carries. Brings us to item number 4. We've got a resolution authorizing a budget substitution in the amount of $1,596,115 for the city match portion of 4 DWRF funded capital projects.
So moved.
Support.
All right, moved and supported. Good morning.
Good morning, Commissioners. Ty Verbrugge, Utility Financial Officer. This is a budget substitution, just moving some money around. Back in July, we issued a bond through the state's Drinking Water Revolving Fund. The proceeds from that issuance are going to cover the majority of these 4 projects. However, there are certain expenses related to these capital projects that are not eligible for that funding. And so we're just moving some of the city's cash, some of the water department's cash around to cover those portions of these projects.
Okay, thanks. Any discussion, colleagues? All right, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, it carries. Item number 5, we've got a resolution authorizing a budget substitution for Phase 2 of the grit tank improvements at the Water Resource Recovery Facility in the amount of $700,000.
So moved.
Support.
Moved and supported. Good morning. Welcome.
Good morning, Commissioners. James Oots, Environmental Services Manager. What you have before you today is a resolution authorizing a budget substitution for $700,000 to complete Phase 2 of the grit tank improvements. This will be a transfer of funds from the sewer capital projects and will not have any impact on our final sanitary sewer budget.
Great, thanks. Colleagues, any questions? All right, hearing none. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, the motion carries. That'll bring us to item number 6. We've got our bid list resolution for October 7th, 2025.
So moved.
Support.
All right, moved and supported. I'll turn to our CFO, Ms. Claren.
Good morning, Commissioners. We only have 3 items this morning. One item that might look a little bit unusual as you're paging through the items is number 2, Neutron Holdings. This is our mobility provider, Lime. You'll see that it's just a contract extension. It's for no cost for a year while the department puts together a request for proposal to go back out and see what the other options are. So I just wanted to note that one for you.
Yep, thanks. And I know that's something we've discussed, and City Manager has kept us posted on just for continuity of services to extend that. But of course, always want to be offering up to other organizations that can provide better services or even better pricing, if possible, to us. So happy to see that extended. So, colleagues, any other questions or comments on those?
I have a comment. I would like to share the perspective of my colleague in the 3rd Ward. Commissioner Perdue wanted to table the Lime Scooter contract due to last year around the annual review time, she requested that we talk more about helmet and, head safety for all of our riders and neighbors, visitors who use the Lime scooter, so that was a concern of hers. I don't share that same concern, but just would like to hear from my colleagues and see if anyone on this committee would like to table this until Lime can provide us with a plan of going forward about what they will do to ensure safety for folks when riding.
Okay.
Okay.
go ahead.
Can I ask the department or maybe Tony, by tabling it, does that mean we stop service? Or if we're not approving this today, what does that mean? Just so the commissioners understand. We're going to delay.
Good morning, Jessica Smith, Mobile GR Department Director. Yes, so tabling this, we're at the end of our contract, and I am bringing this to you all at the last minute, but this is the end of our contract with Lime, and so this is an extension just to continue those services for now, but happy to speak to any safety implications or any questions that you may have.
Sure, yeah. Once again, I don't share these concerns, but I'm wondering if we can take this off of consent so we can have a bigger conversation at COW so Commissioner Perdue can share her concerns.
Yeah, I guess I'll turn to our Interim City Attorney.
And you take one thing off of there?
Yeah, I think we had this last week, a similar situation arise where, because there's just 3 items on here, I wonder if there's a benefit to just removing the entire bid list from COW, or from consent, or city clerk from a agenda management perspective.
That would
what would you prefer?
That would be fine. So a couple options is someone here can make a motion well, we already have a motion on the floor to approve the bid list.
Correct.
So any commissioner can ask to have anything removed from consent. So Commissioner Purdue at the 2:00 meeting could say, I would like to remove the bid list. And then if they want to have a split at that time, then that can happen too.
Yep. I guess from this board standpoint, I would prefer to keep it, approve it. I don't share in those concerns either. If Commissioner Purdue wants to discuss more by taking it off consent, we can certainly cross that bridge at that meeting. But I'd prefer to just pass as is with the given motion, and then we can do so then. Does that sound fair?
Yeah, and I'll follow up with saying, I'm hopeful that we can continue as I believe we have more of that annual review today at COW, and talking about bike safety, pedestrian safety is really important. So I'm hoping that we can have multiple conversations on this. So I plan to vote yes. And
Just let me be clear, because I'm not against it, but to be clear, if we take it off consent and it comes to COW, then we can vote on it then?
No, it would go to the 2:00 meeting.
So we can vote on it at the 2:00 meeting. Okay, because just in respect of, her thoughts and concerns, I personally, we've had a conversation about it. I think we've all talked about it in the last couple of weeks or so. Yes, that is a concern, but I guess it's more around what is the data, right? What are the numbers showing? What incidents have happened? How many fatalities have we had? What have they done to actually, up to this point, mitigate some of those? Because they can't do everything.
yeah.
Right? And so what have they done, and what does the data look like in the safety of utilizing these scooters? So I'm okay with, I think, being respectful and allowing her to share those thoughts and us having that conversation, if we can vote on it at 2:00.
Yep. Okay. Yeah, and I know I don't want to short sight. Mobile GR has done some great work on this. When I served on that board, I know we had a ton of discussions about safety when it comes to scooters, and so I don't know. Maybe Ms. Smith, you could provide some information at that meeting about just, I don't know, what Mobile GR has talked about or what efforts have been done. So,
Thank you, colleagues. Thanks.
yes, of course. So, so with that, I'll call the question on the bid list.
If all three of you vote in favor of this, it'll go on consent. If anyone votes no for the purposes of this committee hearing, it'll be off of consent, and commission will view it independently from the consent agenda.
But Commissioner Purdue could make a motion to remove it from consent
That's
at
right.
the 2:00 meeting.
Okay. All right.
Okay, awesome. So with that, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
I'm an aye. Those opposed? It carries. All right, so that brings us to number 7. We've got a resolution referring proposed changes to the Committee of the Whole for City Commission Policy 100-06, adding fiscal disclosure requirements for elected officials.
So moved.
Support.
All right, moved and support. As I mentioned, this came to us from COW originally, so I'll turn to our Deputy City Attorney here, and he can give us some background and overview of what this consists of.
All right. Well, first of all, let me say this is not personal to me, so I will accept whatever feedback you say, and I encourage you to provide as much or as little feedback as you think is appropriate. This also does not replace the current state law and our current policy that requires conflicts be disclosed in real time. So if you know you have a conflict on an agenda item, that's always going to be the case that you must disclose that, and you can seek advice from the city attorney's office to determine if you do have a legal conflict on a particular item in front of you. So that will always be the case. This is an additional layer of annual disclosures that would, in theory, help the community know what sort of income and where that income comes from, and what sort of liabilities or debts you might have outside of the ordinary course of debts like medical debts we've excluded and some things like that. I'll remind you that this is not going on the consent agenda today. This is referred to the Fiscal Committee by COW to do some work here and to try to figure out what the content of this proposed change might be. The idea would be that this committee, with a vote of 2 or more members, would make recommendations back to COW, and then that would give a broader ability for the Committee of the Whole to discuss and decide what the final content would be. If we come up with final content to recommend to the committee of the whole, what I would intend to do is then bring a redlined policy together with a sample form to the committee of the whole, so they could see even more clearly what this might look like in operation. But to remind you, we had a cow session on July 29th where this concept was kind of presented, and the mayor has been especially excited about this. It mirrors some of his work in the state legislature. On September 9th, after the July 29th meeting, you had asked the law department to do some research regarding model policies or alternative policies across the state. We brought to you 4 different samples of policies, and the feedback that I heard was, let's kind of start with the state policy that clearly kind of hits on some of the categories that the commission was interested in, and then go from there. In the meantime, I heard feedback from the mayor and from some of you that perhaps some commissioners might not be interested in this level of additional reporting. I heard some concerns that this might invite misreporting or invite underreporting, and what does that mean moving forward? So in order to try to avoid some of those pitfalls, we did increase the thresholds of the dollar amounts that are required for disclosure. So if you own a $800 mountain bike, that isn't necessarily an asset that you need to disclose. But for those more expensive real estate holdings or income that you earn that is a meaningful income for your annual reportable income, those things are included in this potential fiscal disclosure document. The mayor had suggested that spousal income was again something that he thought was important. So you'll see in the first section, I'm going into number 3 on the proposed recommendation back to Cow. Spousal information and income that a spouse would earn would be reportable. Employment income over $5,000 in the annual reporting period would be reportable. Roles with organizations, so service to nonprofits or other community organizations, would be something that you would disclose despite it not necessarily being a conflict. This is a level of transparency that the state elected officials are required to disclose. Assets, real property valued over $10,000, investments over $10,000, and other assets or business assets exceeding that $10,000 threshold would be disclosable. Liabilities during the reporting period, mortgages, loans, or credit lines, you may exclude medical debt, unsecured debt from a financial institution or federal government, or revolving debt for a business, a regular business debt. Any employment agreements that are reached and offered to extend after your term of office with the city would be the final category of disclosure. Again, these essentially mirror what the state elected officials have codified in the state law. We have increased the thresholds a little bit to make the reporting hopefully a little bit easier and more meaningful for commissioners and elected officials. And that is what's before you today. Happy to answer any questions or hear any revisions. The timing of this going back to Cow, this isn't necessarily time sensitive, so if this committee requires more time to do work on this, you're welcome to do that. But this is the first work session on this particular policy change.
Awesome, thanks. And I want to note too, I mean, this isn't an attempt to be like a gotcha towards, any elected official. It's more or less just our way to show, additional transparency, just like many other elected officials do, as mentioned at the state. So with that, I'll turn to my colleagues and see if there's any questions or comments that they have, general thoughts. And then I just had a couple small procedural questions. But other than that, I'll let you both go first if you'd like.
Yeah, I take issue with a number of things that are listed in here. First of all, just for clarity, the difference between the state and city is vast in how they do business. There is opportunity at the state level for lobbying for specific things within that boundary that they may have access to certain funds or certain things to move in a way to help a person do a thing, right? It's very different here at the city because we have a lot of parameters in place and guidelines. We don't have access to the engineering funds. We don't have access to executive department funds. We don't have access to those things. What we do as a body is vote on the things that are presented to us as a commission and talk about what those things are. And our responsibility to me as commissioners is to engage with community to get their voice. We're the conduit for their voice into this body to help make decisions as it pertains to policy. So I feel like what we had in place was sufficient for that. I don't remember a time, at least myself personally, where there has been anything that has come up that either the city clerk or city manager has not said, we're bringing this, you're a part of that, you might remember, so when this comes up, make sure to recuse yourself. And I feel like that has happened. I think we are digging into the weeds when we start asking for people's, you need to know how many houses I own, you need to know what other income, because I do a lot of things in the community. But if it's anything that pertains to the city, I've already removed myself from that. So when the Grow 1000 started, I was the one that helped them start that program and do the mentoring piece and was over that mentoring piece for young people. Once I became a commissioner, I stepped back from that, right? And so we hold people to a higher level of integrity and character in this position, and I think it just doesn't apply. So that's my opinion. I'm a no on it.
Okay. Nope, appreciate you sharing your thoughts. And two, I want to reiterate, I totally agree. I think as a body, we do a great job of, being forthright if there is some sort of, even perceived conflict and just going above and beyond to make sure we're not putting ourselves into a funky situation. So I do agree with that piece for sure. Any thoughts, Commissioner Kilgore?
Yeah, thank you, colleagues. I'm very supportive of these measures. In 2015, the state as a whole received an F grade from the Center for Public Integrity and Global Integrity. So, it's been 10 years since that. Not much has changed. We're still, an F is an F. And I think this is a really awesome opportunity to model to our state of how leadership looks and how there's nothing to hide, and just continuing to show state lawmakers as well. I was very supportive of the BRIGHT Act, so that's bringing reforms in integrity, transparency, and ethics. This hasn't really passed through the State House. So this reform that is trying to happen at the state where, you make rules for bad actors, and that's what I'm hoping we do here. Both my colleague in the Third World and myself ran against folks who had a lot of money in different places and were supported by very wealthy people. And I wonder sometimes once folks get here, some of the folks who they're beholden to. And I'd much rather have folks not be beholden to, let's say, big developers. We are constantly passing things, yes or no, to big developments in the city. And I'd rather not have our elected officials be beholden to dark money or special interests. So I think this is a great way that we can model this and show transparency, integrity, and the best ethics that we have here. So I'm supportive of it. And I'm hopeful that we can bring back to Cal what we currently have here. I think is sufficient. I think it goes a little bit further than the state law, which is good here, and hopefully will show the state as a whole what leadership should look like in terms of government transparency. So very supportive of it in bringing this towards Cal.
Okay, great, thanks. I'll just share a couple of my thoughts. I agree, and I'm supportive of this as well. I think we've discussed at COW, just, wanting to be intentional with, building trust with government and the public. I think that's, obviously a philosophical conversation, but, in supporting this too, I'm not doing so out of a concern or again, a gotcha against certain commissioners, elected officials now or in the future. It's more, in my estimation, just kind of, like you said, going above and beyond just to show transparency and being forthright with the people that we represent. So I guess just kind of had some questions more about like a couple definitions. So under the liabilities piece, maybe there's a definition already in the full policy somewhere, but things like the unsecured debt from a financial institution, I guess, I don't know, there might end up being some questions like, does that include like a credit card? Does that include, just like a personal loan that's not tied to like any sort of collateral? I guess that was just one of my initial questions.
Yeah, unsecured debt from a financial institution or the federal government usually is going to be student loans or credit card debt, and
Okay.
you don't necessarily have to disclose that information.
Okay.
And if there are questions, I think the city attorney's office stands by, happy to help anyone as we get into the habit potentially of filling out new forms. We want to be a resource
Sure.
to you to help answer some of those questions along the way.
Yep. And then just the other one too. So I know under the assets, so J, listing securities or investments. I mean, I guess myself as an example, I don't, trade individual stocks or bonds or things like that, but have just a general retirement account. So I assume it would just be sufficient to maybe just say, general 401k retirement account managed by XYZ broker or something of that like.
That's how I've seen it reported at the state level, and I think that, that for me as an attorney would be sufficient. I think if the commission desires something different, you'd have to maybe more fine tune that definition as you go. The nice thing about this policy is you can always make adjustments if you find yourself seeking clarity or needing some more clarity as you fill these forms out and operationalize this. It's not uncommon that you might find something that needs to be a little bit more fine-tuned, and we could bring back a simple recommendation to revise the policy again. You'd like to get it right the first time around, but no harm if you got to do some tinkering along the way.
Yep. No, that's a good reminder too. We're not writing something in concrete. We're starting with putting our best foot forward in something that we ideally, think covers all of our bases, but always, like you mentioned, have the opportunity to further refine them over time. So, that was really all my questions. Like I said, I'm supportive. So currently the motion on the table is to refer this as written back to committee of the whole. Commissioner, I know you mentioned you're not supportive, so I assume this will just, procedurally what happens then in that case.
The way the agenda item would be proposed to committee of the whole would be this fiscal committee with a 2-1 vote is recommending these proposed changes to the policy. We can be very transparent in the report back out to committee of the whole, and you'll have more opportunities to make some requested changes there.
Okay.
And that comes back today?
No, I'll work with the city manager, perhaps the second meeting in October. But depending on what the agenda looks like for committee of the whole at that time, we may push it to November. Really, if this goes into operation, I think the quickest report would be due in May of 2026. So we've got some time.
Okay, thank you.
I also wanted to add on there, sorry, city attorney, there is a piece in there about elected officials and just wondering why it didn't include appointed as well.
Sure. Appointeds have contracts, so you can hold the appointed officials to whatever sort of disclosures you think are appropriate within their individual contracts.
Okay.
You self-govern yourselves in terms of the disclosures that you're going to make transparent to the public. And I would think that each individual appointed official might want to talk to you more about whether or not it would be appropriate. The appointed officials are bound by the conflicts of interest, state law, and the policy with attachment A. So appointed officials would have to disclose any conflicts of interest in real time. But this additional piece is subject to negotiation with those individual employee contracts, in my opinion.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's a good question, though, Commissioner. Thanks. Any other thoughts or comments? Otherwise, I will go. Yep. Go ahead.
Yeah, just a few comments. If the commission does, proceed with this revision, but on the note of what Commissioner Knight just pointed out, just making sure it's, understood that the current policy does apply to both elected and appointed officials. And so if the commission does proceed, I think it makes sense to, at minimum, meet our current standards in the present policy. I would actually even advocate for the commission to consider incorporating really anyone that's in a leadership financial decision-making capacity for the city of Grand Rapids. So whether that's not just, elected and appointed, but, deputies, perhaps even, department heads. So that's just some general feedback. I think we're teeing this up for the right reasons for transparency, but I think we have an opportunity to show the public, how far we're willing to go to embed transparency in the government.
Sure. Yep. No, I appreciate you sharing that. And Jonah had something?
Well, I would just point out that for better or worse, you're not subject to collective bargaining agreements, and the rules and the laws around Public Employee Labor Relations Act and how a new work expectation might apply to those that are in unions would take some additional conversation, having just negotiated and settled all of the contracts for the city, to impose a new requirement on individuals that may be in collective bargaining units could undo a lot of great work that was just done through the collective bargaining process. So I would caution against, I think the intent and the idea and the concept is noble, but I think that some of the practicalities that could be created by that sort of approach might be something maybe talking about during the next collective bargaining session, as opposed to trying to jam it down without any labor communication.
Sure. No, that's a good caveat there. And I think, transparency can look a ton of different ways. And so whether, maybe this format is used for elected officials, and I don't know, we talk about other ways we can be more transparent with the public when it comes to just day-to-day city operations. I think that's a fair conversation too. So appreciate you sharing that. So hearing no other questions or comments, I'll go ahead and call the question then. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. And those opposed?
Aye.
All right, the motion carries. So that brings us to our last two items here. Item number 8, we've got our comptroller's warrant report for the period of September 9th, 2025 through September 22nd, 2025, in the amount of $27,748,482.62, and monthly travel report. And I will turn it over to our city comptroller again.
Good morning, commissioners. For the period reference there, cash payments were released totaling approximately $27.7 million, which includes approximately $5.9 million for employee payroll expense and just over $122,000 for income tax warrants. In terms of quantity, 418 income tax refunds were issued and 1,213 checks and electronic payments were issued. These funds were issued by payments or by individuals not in the city comptroller's office and not in accordance with the city charter. Also, in our report here this morning, we have the monthly travel report for July 2025, the first month of the new fiscal year. And that report is showing that, let me just scroll down to it here, that we have spent just over $56,000 on approximately $2.3 million annual budget for travel spend, excuse me.
Okay, thanks. We'll go ahead and receive and file that. And then lastly, that brings us to our treasurer's report for period of September 10th, 2025 through September 23rd, 2025.
Good morning, Commissioners.
Morning.
With the report today, we did have a 0.25% reduction in the Fed funds rate. So that's the first step down. We don't know if there's going to be a second one. We don't know until the economic numbers come out. In fact, we're seeing the effects of the federal government shutdown because we're not getting labor statistics. We're not getting the type of reporting. So we're kind of in a little hold period right now, waiting to see when the government's going to open back up. We're going to see those numbers start churning out again. I was fortunate enough to be invited to Crane's Power Breakfast out at Cascade Country Club with Fed CEO and President of the Federal Reserve of Chicago, Austin Goolsbee. Very impressive speaker, very articulate. He makes economics kind of cool. the one thing he really definitely pointed out are the things that we pointed out before, is that the Fed has a dual mandate. One is to achieve full employment. The other is to maintain a 2% inflation rate. The problem is that both of those numbers are moving in the wrong direction, and the Fed only has one tool. The only tool they have in the toolbox is to change interest rates. So they're kind of locked in. We don't know what to do until we have better numbers coming out of our economy, and to have tariffs come into full force to really filter through all the economic data. And so that's where the rub is right now. That's where the pause is right now. They're not going to overheat the market and turn it down. They're not going to constrict it too much by turning it too high. So I appreciate the fact that they're taking that cautious, data-driven approach. Just as we talk about data-driven things and other decisions that we make, it's very important for them to make this data-driven decision and not be a political item. We do have a chart here it's called the dot plot diagram, showing where they think the Fed governors are voting for these rates to go. And really, when we're looking at, even out to 2008, they're highly leveraged between 2.75 and 3.5%. So we're still 2 full years away from that occurring. So it shows their uncertainty until they actually get concrete data. And I do say I appreciate that, because if markets turn too fast, that means everybody's trying to reposition, and you'll see wild swings if they move too quickly. For our portfolio, we are sitting at $788 million, and we're earning over 3.49%.
Great, thanks. I'll turn to my colleagues, see if they have any questions, thoughts, concerns. All right. Just one quick question. Is there, with the federal government shutdown, is there anything that we need to keep our eyes on as a city from a funding perspective, or, programs, things like that?
The city manager and his team and Karen Farrick, they're looking to see what types of things might impact us. If there's any delay in any of the Fed funding for either the roads or for grants or other things, they're really honing in on what are those things impacting the organization. As far as my view in the treasurer's office, we're not seeing anything that's impacting our operation. But again, unless it's trying to receipt the cash that's coming from them, that's something we can't do if it's not on its way. But for us, we actually are doing very well, making sure our funds are fully invested and we're earning good interest rates, and we're following to see, again, closely to see if there's going to be any major change. And if there is, we'll throw the flag up right away, and we'll definitely engage with the city manager's office.
Awesome. Okay. Appreciate it. Well, that's all I got, and that also wraps up our scheduled agenda items here.
Ms. Claire.
I was just going to jump in, sorry.
No, go right ahead.
While we're on that topic of the shutdown, there's legislative committee today, so I believe that's going to be discussed. But from a fiscal standpoint, we have been looking at that. Beyond a few weeks, we're not too worried, but once it gets past, week 2, I'm working with our Connie Bohatch out of Community Development, as well as Stevie Parcell, to assess which grants we're getting reimbursements from that are going to be delayed, because obviously we're going to have to cover that. So there is a risk. I'm hoping this doesn't go past October. I also will be doing a fiscal update in November, so that will be definitely a heavy topic in the coming weeks if we don't get closure going. But we're hoping for the best right now. So.
Okay. Yep.
Nothing to worry about today. How's it?
Well, that's good. Thank you. All right. We'll go ahead and adjourn our meeting here. It is 9:08.